Great Debaters Contest is brought to you by Safaricom M-Pesa. The Great Debaters Contest 2016 registration is now open. Teachers or school administrations should register on www.greatdebaterscontest.com/register.
This is the region that has brought us champions not once but twice. Great Debaters Contest, Nakuru region, Austin Nyumbok.
And Mariam Bashar. Today we start off with a battle of the ladies. Njoro Precious versus Marymount Secondary School are debating on whether African nations should rely on their Western counterparts for economic sustainability. Let's see how the ladies fare on. Proposer number 1, you have 3 minutes.
A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a step. They refer to me as John Aminga Iman from Njoro Precious. I've stood here strongly proposing the motion that states, should African nations rely on the Western nations for economic sustainability? Take a second and think about the current education you have. Yeah, the current education we have. If it were for the Western nations crossing over into the African nations to come and colonize us, where will our leaders be? Where will the youth of these nations be? I think we should salute the Western nations for crossing over and giving us colonization. They saw us that us Africans have the skills, but we never had enough education so that we can polish our skills. Yes, they sat down and came up with various ways that we can be able to specialize on our skills. And this way was establishing different schools. A good example is the Alliance Group of Schools, which is found in Nairobi, Kenya. And when they finished establishing the school, they called us Africans to go and study in that school so that we can be able to specialize on our skills. Tourism. I think Africa is a blessed continent. Yes, indeed, it is a blessed continent. We have a favorable climate that favors everyone. I think when you are here in Africa, the Western nation admire us. Indeed, they truly admire us because of one climate, not only about our climate, but also the tourist attractions that we have. We have different tourist attractions, including the Kruger National Park, which is found in South Africa, and I cannot forget about the crossing of the wild beast in Masai Mara, which is found in Kenya, crossing over to the Serengeti National Park, which is found in Tanzania. This, when they come to the African nation, they give us foreign exchange. In this foreign exchange, we Africans are able to utilize it. And how do we utilize it? One, we are able to improvise our infrastructure, or in other terms, we are able to improve on the infrastructure. And what is this infrastructure? This infrastructure includes the roads. A good example is the rural roads. Right now, they have been improved, and it is easy for one to travel, and it also saves times. Another thing is about creating job opportunities. Yes, indeed, it creates job opportunities in these big fancy hotels where our youths of this nation go and get employed there and earn a living. Technology. Everyone's talk about technology, but the big question, where did this technology come from? Actually, the internet that we all Africans are using. The internet was established by the Western nations. Did you know that? As I conclude, I do not have much to say, but to ask my fellow opposers to cross over the borders and help us to join hands together, supporting this motion that states African nations should rely on the Western nations for economic sustainability.
Opposition, you have 3 minutes for your opening statements.
When you find water rising to your ankle, that is the time to start, not when it has risen up to your neck. A wise man once said, thank God he's African, that life, struggle amidst pain, blood, and poverty seemed beautiful. Despite so much pain, suffering, and misery we may be undergoing, the goodwill of one makes the whole picture beautiful. And yes, African countries should not, and I mean not, rely on Western countries for economic sustainability. Africa is our motherland. The Western countries comprise of US and Europe as continents. Now, what is economic sustainability? Economic sustainability is a system capable of continuing for a long time by which a country runs. Come along with me on this journey as we try to unearth and discover raw and ripe. Monument building. My grandfather, a wise man, once told me, if you give with your right hand, then not even your left hand should know about it. What motives do the West have when they help us? I am not opposed to their generosity, but I refuse to be helped, not out of humanity, but for the sake of praise earning for oneself. Africa can do this on its own. It's like when they give us, we have to give them back. You see, these Western countries, what they are aiming at is to establish a platform in Africa by which they can conquer us. We cannot allow that. No, we cannot. As Africa, we can unite, we can stand, we can sponsor ourselves, sponsor our own projects. In any case, umoja ni nguvu, utengano ni udhaifu. The journey moves on. Duplication. Well, you see, most of these Western countries have actually invested a lot in AIDS, and thanks to them, it is contained. But we have forgotten the equally, probably more pandemic, disastrous cancer. Now, cancer is rapidly, because it is spreading so fast. It is rapidly rising to be a worldwide disaster. Now, if you help me on one sector and leave the other one, what have you done to me? It's like giving a crippled man a shoe. It's like playing sweet music to a deaf man. You are just doing nothing. No offense. You see, Western aid is tied to certain projects, and the aid they're giving us is pushing us to a confined corner, not to a freedom of possibilities. We do not need their help. In any case, if we want to be where they are, it's not about relying or depending on them. It's about following their footsteps, doing what they did to be where they are, or even into a much more better place. When suffering knocks at your door and you tell him you have no seat for him, he tells you not to worry because he has a seat for himself.
We'll hear rebuttals now. Proposition, you have 3 minutes.
I have toiled and moiled to reach this place, to strongly support the motion that goes, should African nations depend or rely on the Western nation for economic sustainability? Let's take a look at security. I would like to take all of you back to the Kenya 2007 and 2008 political wrangles. For your information, Kenya is in Africa. Why did the Kenyans have wrangles? Those political wrangles was caused a lot of insecurity. At the same time, the Western nations, due to the fightings, we were able to fight. The Western nations helped us during that time of political wrangles in terms of food aid. Also, when we have drought and famine, we are able to get that food aid from those people. At the same time, we have the Dadaab refugee camp in Somalia, and that those people at those camps are able to be supported by the Western nation in terms of food. Concerning security, as Africans, we know about terrorists, and we believe that the Western nations have intelligence services that help us to fight the terrorists. So, if we know so, these intelligence services help us to fight those terrorists. We have to go hand in hand to join those people in order for them to support us. At the same time, you find that Kenya, which is in Africa, sent their military troops into the US for them to be trained. At the same time, in Kenya, we have a joint training armies that is in Laikipia. So you find that Africans are benefiting from this joint army to train their militaries for in case of the attack by the terrorists. Another thing is concerning funding of the NGOs. You find that so many NGOs organizations in Africa are funded by the Western nations. So I think we should rely on the Western nation for our economic sustainability.
Position, you have 3 minutes for your rebuttal.
Necessity is the mother of invention. But I can't help but wonder, when will Africa be able to make its own lemonade if we keep on depending on the West for economic sustainability? When will we be able to grow if we keep on enjoying the shade of dependency provided to us? My name is Njoro, and I'm here to oppose the motion at hand. Before I begin my first point, I'd like to correct my opponent when she said that they help us in times of need. There is no free lunch, so there is no free help. Everything has a price, which we all have to pay. In relation to terrorism, you say that they can help us in terrorism through those, but these foreigners themselves are the ones who come into our country in form of foreigners and are actually terrorists. And you talked about NGOs. If you watched the news in the distant past, you realize that some of these NGOs were actually speculated of being the ones to fund the terrorists. Now, walk with me on to my first point, which is Africa is rich. There is no doubt about it. I mean, look at our agricultural sector. We have bountiful harvest, large hectares of fertile land. Look at our education sector, bright students. Look at us over here. Aren't we bright? Look at also the talent we have over here. As I stand over here, am I not talented? I am. So what else do we need from the West? We already have it. All we ask for is a platform to show our talent. More platform like the debaters. More and better industries so that we can be able to process and manufacture our own products and be able to export them when they are fully processed instead of the half-baked exports we make to their countries, which end up coming back to our countries. On to my second point, which is Africa is the way it is because our leaders are not the way they ought to be. Now, bear in mind, when I talk about leaders, I mean to say everyone in authority. Every prefect, businessman, politician. Now, I don't think I'm wrong when I say that most of our leaders in Africa are corrupt. For example, look at payment of tax. When you look at payment of tax, some of them want a decrement in tax, some of them do not want to pay tax, and some of them actually don't even pay tax. Now, is this logical? They earn more than an average African, yet they still do not want to pay tax. I propose that leaders should be accountable in their areas. They should observe integrity, because if they are integral and if they are responsible, Africa's economy will grow. If no corruption is there, I don't see the reason why there will be a decline in our economy. On to my third point. The West has enough trouble as it is. Why should we even bother them? I mean, their house is already burning. So is it logic for us to ask them to come and help us? I believe that is very selfish on our part.
The Great Debaters Contest 2016 registration is now open. Teachers or school administrations should register on www.greatdebaterscontest.com/register. The Great Debaters Contest 2016 registration is now open. Teachers or school administrations should register on www.greatdebaterscontest.com/register.
Proposers, you've been asked, what if the Western countries withdraw their aid? Do we then resort to begging? And the opposition has been challenged to name any NGOs that have been proven to fund terrorism in the past. We'll now go over to their replies. Proposal number 3, you have 3 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, being on my toes, I'd like to propose the motion that states, should African nations rely on Western nations for economic sustainability? And I say yes, Africa should rely on the Western nations. For starters, you find that many companies in Africa are owned by the Western people. For instance, just in Naivasha, Kenya, you'll find that many flower farms are owned by the Western people. You find that these Western people are the people providing job opportunities for Africans. So if the Westerners didn't invent these companies in Africa, you'll find that in Africa could be having a lot of unemployed people who will just be roaming around without doing anything. You find that the very few countries in Africa which claim to be recording progress in their economic growth have their people living in great misery and suffering, of which it's like an increase in the national economy is directly proportional to an increase in poverty. What these nations are experiencing is development in irony. Because you find that instead of someone moving from rags to riches, the poor become poorer and the rich become richer. Currently, Africans are the cause of Africa under development. In that, they are still blaming the people who colonized them many years back. And yet, Africa is not the only continent which was colonized. Latin America bounced back from colonialism. Europe bounced back from World War I and World War II. And currently, if you check their economic status, they are doing well. And also, Africa is geographically stable in that it's not affected by natural calamities such as hurricanes and tornadoes. But you find that Africa is the poorest inhabited nation in the entire world. I think you should just pause for a minute and think what could be of Africa if natural calamities such as hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanicity could affect Africa. I'd also like to oppose what the first opposer said, was Lona Wanjiku. She said that Africa can sponsor itself. Now, how can Africa sponsor itself without the source of capital? So Africa still has to depend on the Western people for the source of capital so as to develop themselves.
Position, you also have 3 minutes to respond to the question.
For the sake of clarification, my fellow member of parliament said suspected, not affirmed. For the sake of security purposes, I wish to conceal the name of the NGOs. Look at the great debaters. Aren't they not sponsoring themselves? Kama and Mindy, Marymount Secondary. So, cuisine experts said that if you can read, you can cook. In the very same way, if we can lean on others, why can't we lean on ourselves? To start with, we shall be washing our dirty linen in public. Do we have to stoop so low, below our dignity, below our pride? Honorable Obama said, yes, we can. So all we need to do is join our hands together. Believe me, we will be halfway to the promised land. After all, the pain of discipline is temporary, but the pain of compromise is permanent. Get that? The pain of discipline is temporary, but the pain of compromise is permanent. Secondly, we will only worsen the conflicts in Africa. Let's have a case study where funds are allocated to build 100 kilometers of road. Every county needs development, and we will not have a situation where 10 kilometers allocated to 10 counties. So, in the long run, development will only take part in one county. And what will this do? It will breed conflicts due to inferiority complex on the part of some of the counties. So what should we do? Empower the middle class. A while back, we had a case where Safaricom was selling out its shares, and there was oversubscription by up to over 100% that they had to give back all the money. So it is not that we are not willing, just give us a platform and we will show you what we're made of. Thirdly, we are hungry. Actually, we are very hungry. If at all we get funds, only half is used to either develop or jumpstart our projects. We are unable to trace the roots of our destruction, that is us. We need to hold our leaders accountable. How? By promoting modern technology. If our M-Pesa transactions can be traced back up to so many years back, what can't we do? We can trace our past records. And the frauds will pay for the unjust acts. After all, malipo ni hapa hapa duniani. So, let us not rely on the West. We are not even affirmative that they will always be there for us. After all, a baby. In the long run, after all, a baby, so many years after birth, will just have to learn to rely on themselves and not from the aid they get from their parents. Thank you.
We'll now hear closing statements. Proposition, you have 1 minute.
If someone is given enough rope, he will definitely hang himself. And so, ladies and gentlemen, the ball is in your court for you to take. And also, I'd like to say that, yes, Obama said, yes, we can. How sure are you Obama was referring to the government of the United States by saying, yes, the government of United States can. And also, I'd like to appreciate the great debaters for giving the students in Nakuru County a chance to build their confidence, courage, and also get the chance to challenge each other. Thank you.
Opposition, you also have a minute.
Ladies and gentlemen, do not trouble before trouble troubles you. Do not take us back to the 60s. Do not take us back to colonialization. One of the truest tests of integrity is its refusal to be compromised. And like my friend here said, the pain of discipline is temporary, but the pain of compromise is permanent. Africa can do this. In any case, Africa's economy is like a runner waiting for the gun to go. Everywhere I look, I see potential for successful undertaking, and the gun firing can be done by our leaders, and the whole of Africa is ready to go. We do not need any help. We can do this on our own. Africa is strong. It is not a land of plenty for nothing. And yes, we can. It does not matter from whose mouth that came from. What matters is the message that quote carries. Yes, we can. Africa can. On its own 2 feet. Thank you.
What we lack in this particular debate in Njoro Pressures is content and evidence of research. There's a lot of, forgive me for the statement, but vague statements made to support the motion, which cannot be validated. You know, the team you tried, but there's a lot you need to do in terms of presentation of your arguments, research, and also analysis of your content. For first-timers, it was a fair presentation.
I would want to address Mary Mount. Lorna, very passionate speaker, very clear. I love your examples, the monument building and the aid example that you gave. Very good examples. Anne, you're the cross-examiner. I would say it was fair in terms of cross-examination, but however, you're a very good speaker. I love your points on good no free lunch, good use of questions when you're asking the audience. I think you did very well, and that was commendable of you as a team. All the best.
Normally, when you're proposing a motion, the way you start sets the pace for the whole debate. So if you start on a low note, everything else will be on a low note. Secondly, good use of relevant examples actually to the two groups. But what I want to mention is many of you have written down your points very well and outlined them. But when you get on stage, you get mixed up and it affects the coherence of the argument. Please follow your outline notes very well and then you'll have coherency of argument. Thank you.
Thank you very much, judges. To the scores now. This is our first debate of the region, so we're glad that they've started us off on a good note. Njoro Precious, the judges awarded you with 60%. Please give them a round of applause. Marymount Secondary School, you are our winners for the day with 73%.
Congratulations to the two schools for a very, very good feat, and we'd urge members of the audience to follow us on social media and also our viewers back home at Great Debaters EA on Twitter and Arimas Media on Instagram and all the rest. My name is Austin Njoro.
And I am Mariam Bashar. We'll see you next time.
The Great Debaters Contest 2016 registration is now open. Teachers or school administrations should register on www.greatdebaterscontest.com/register. The Great Debaters Contest was brought to you by Safaricom M-Pesa.